Reclaimed is the podcast about the woman's journey of reclaiming her power through somatic work, breathwork, plant medicine, and conversations. I am Kyla Gagnon, and this is Reclaimed. Hello, sweet friends. Welcome back to the conversation. I have Luci Lampe on the podcast today. I'm so excited for this conversation. Luci is a mom of 4. She's a trauma-informed sex and relationship coach, award-winning singer and songwriter, commercial actress and print model, and 3 times author. Her writing has been featured on the Huffington Post, Forbes, Entrepreneur.com, CBS, and Fox. After overcoming an autoimmune disorder and embarking on a deep healing journey and spiritual awakening during her former husband's 2-year disability and depression, Luci's work shifted deeper into the realms of erotic liberation and spiritual reclamation. Now, after her journey of conscious uncoupling, after a 17-year marriage, she brings a new depth to the message of open-hearted living and relating for couples, women, and men. Professionally, she draws upon her studies and certifications in neurolinguistic programming, somatic experiencing, cognitive behavioral therapy, hypnotherapy, Reiki, counseling, EFT tapping, and her degree in exercise science to create unique, powerful programs and curricula for her students and clients and members. Enjoy the conversation. Hi, Luci. Thanks for coming onto the show.
Thank you so much for having me here, Kyla, and for, well, yeah, we're finally here. I feel like we did it. Schedule at least once. Yeah,
we did it. Good things are worth waiting for.
Yes, indeed.
I was thinking this morning, so the podcast is called Reclaimed, and I was thinking, oh my God, this is the moment. This episode, we haven't done it yet, but I trust that this is like the episode that this podcast was like based on, just like the women's journey of reclaiming her power. And I just don't know that I could have a better guest for this conversation.
Oh, thank you. This year has been like the reclamation, but I will say, and we'll get into this more, it didn't start this year. So.
Right.
Yes.
Okay. So Luci, I pulled my audience. I've never actually done this, but because I was so excited about our conversation, I was like, I know that my audience is also going to be excited. So I pulled my audience and I was like, what do you want? What do you want to ask Luci? And so I do love the idea of us just like organically flowing, and we will. And I also want to give the people a little bit of what they want. And so we'll do both, right? You know, if you want to go down a rabbit hole, please go. And I'll do my best to like place the questions where I can place them.
Okay.
If that's okay. Yeah. Okay, good. The first thing that I think, at least, okay, so I found you on the land of Instagram, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago. And you came into my orbits very, very timely, of course, as everything is, but it was your relationship to self-pleasure and the importance of it, the beauty of it, the detangling of societal shame around it. And I just love you for this. And so one of the questions there was, and maybe we can even go into this, there was a history of religion. And I don't know the depth of that, but I know that there was a history of religion. And then there was this, I think you went to like a 3 or 4 day event that kind of like bling, started to change everything. I'd love to know more about that. So tell us how you took that leap from, I don't know if you were raised religious or just landed in that in your adult life, to now kind of rebelling against it a little bit. And I don't know how deep into that journey you want to go, but share what you are willing to share, please.
Yes. Oh, let's get started. Okay. So let me get ready. I mean, I was a pastor's kid, so I was as deep as you can get. Not cult level deep, but deep. And my entire identity was my religious faith. I would say that earlier on, it was more my relationship with the source of love, but then it became more about adhering to certain rules and trying to fit into that. into that particular construct, especially as an immigrant family. You know, we didn't have a lot of wiggle room to get out of line, you know,
Right.
and I was the only girl. I have one older brother. Um, so yeah, there was a lot, there were a lot of layers to explore there. I would say that there was a period of maybe a couple years where I was very deep in the rebelling against the system and the religious and the patriarch and all these things. But and I feel like for anyone listening to who has come from a background like that, similar to mine, whether it's evangelical Christianity or Catholicism or Mormonism, whatever it may be, that it's normal to kind of swing to the other end for a bit and just try to find your center. And so it doesn't always necessarily need to, it's not always going to stay on that extreme, but it sure feels very liberating to give yourself permission to go there. So it took some years to deconstruct my faith and reconstruct my faith, and along with that, my my erotic identity. You know, what is it that I desire? Not only desire sexually, but also the things that I felt like I desired in my life that I felt would be taboo or you know, hands off. And so all of these things are very intimately intertwined. My spirituality and my sexuality are one. And that is something that would have been absolute blasphemy to say in my upbringing in that context. But yeah, there was an event at one point, and this was in the throes of a really challenging time in my life and marriage at the time. There was about a 2.5 year period where my husband at the time, he went through depression and disability. And during that time, I was giving birth to our fourth child, and my body developed an autoimmune disorder. And it was just a lot. It was a lot of things at once. And I was just drowning in life. And so I opened myself to some, you know, exploring what other healing modalities and things there were outside of church. And so that just led me on into the wilderness, into the spiritual wilderness for sure.
Yeah.
It was very lonely there. It can be very lonely there. Oh my God. Doesn't have to be, but often it is. And I came across an event that was actually marketed for entrepreneurs, which I had already been an entrepreneur for years at that point. And I thought, I need some community to help me network and whatever. And there's something in there that just resonated with my soul. And the event that was a few days long, it was about emotional intelligence and all that. But what I got out of it was I felt safe enough for the first time to go into the deeper, uncomfortable emotions. And so that was my first access to my rage and that deeper grief. And from there, it just skyrocketed from there, just the opening.
Yeah, there's something unexplainable. Like I find it hard to have words for how powerful it is to be in spaces that you can show up in that way. Right. And for someone who's never experienced that, it's hard to let that land and for them to really understand it. But it is and really, it really is life-changing.
It is. Yeah.
Was there anyone that inspired you, or what was it that was nudging you to seek outside of the church? Like, what was there a person? Was there something? Was there just this internal knowing of like, there's something else?
No, there wasn't a person or anything really inspiring me besides my pain. When they say that 70% of our motivation comes from pain, that was my rock bottom. Like I never considered myself to be someone who would want to end their life, but if there was one moment in my life that I did, that was it. And that's how low I had gotten. And so I said, I can't live like this anymore. And I don't know what the fuck I'm going to do, but it's not. And so, so I remember going on YouTube and researching, how do I change my unconscious belief? Because I heard about something that was like, How do I
Was that
change my
before?
unconscious beliefs that I don't even know that I have? Because I think that'll fix me. It's so funny how looking back, but that
Mm-hmm.
the pain was the motivation. It was the
Mm-hmm.
will to stay alive.
Yeah, as it is sometimes. Biggest motivation. I want to go back to the piece you shared briefly just about that time in your marriage. That is actually a question that came up is how do you stay, how would you moving forward stay heart open and committed when a partner is going through a struggle like that? How do you do it?
Well, I think it begins with just making a decision to do it.
Yeah.
And the place that I see clients and couples and women specifically more often than kind of get stuck in the process is just having one foot in, one foot out because they're not sure. Is this the best relationship? Should I step out or should I fully go in? And I just had a thing. I guess I could see this as a fortunate thing for me that I
Mm-hmm.
got a very clear message in my spiritual path from the universe that said, you know what, if your marriage does end, if you do leave, it will not be from a place of trying to escape. You will leave with complete peace, knowing that that was the best thing. And that's actually what happened years later, right? Again, not that
Yeah.
most recently.
Yeah.
But I think that when you, um, like, I had this deeper knowing. And
Mm-hmm.
I would dare to say that everyone has that deeper knowing, but sometimes it's clouded by self doubt and by, maybe some of those wounds or fears or questions of is this my trauma or is this my intuition? And nobody can tell you what that is.
Mm-hmm. I was just having that conversation with a friend the other day. They're at this point where they're like, I can't tell if it's my intuition or my fear, my old shit. Like, I can't help you. I can't
Yeah,
help you.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there is a sense for me there over the years of doing the practices that I now guide women through and that I've
Mm-hmm.
continued to do and that have helped me through like the biggest heartbreak of my life is
Mm-hmm.
when as you establish more safety and trust with your body and you do work through those things that in your physiological nervous system keep you from being able to access that deeper wisdom that lives in your body. As you do that,
Mm-hmm.
as you work through those layers, it becomes more and more clear, what are the body signals? For example, for me, when something is a yes or it's a deep knowing, there is this space in my body that I physically feel. It's it's behind my belly, deep, deep, deep down in my womb, like right at my
Mm-hmm.
cervix, kind of that area right there. And it feels like a glowing softness, and that's my yes. And when I feel a no, it's like almost like this contraction in my being, in my energy, and
Yeah.
a different feeling in my gut. But then
Yeah.
again, this is why we've got to work with the body because easily the nervous system can contract when
Mm-hmm.
it's just used to contracting under that stimulus and not because it's your
Yeah.
intuition. So there's a lot of layers to this that we have to commit to working with ourselves.
Yeah. Thanks for bringing that in. And that's, I speak about because I do work with somatics and breathwork primarily. And when someone chooses to tap into this work, getting to know their body, working with their body, working with the language of their body, there has to be patience because this is slow, tender,
Yes.
gentle work.
Yeah.
And we're so used to like instant gratification and quick. I mean, I'm sure this is, work that you would work on a client with, but if someone was just like, how do I do that? Like, how do I know?
But
How do I
how?
know? How is there even an answer? It's like, you just have to have
Yeah,
time.
but and everyone has their own answers. I think sometimes too we might be afraid to tap in because we deep down we know, and if we
Mm-hmm.
know that we know, then we're accountable to
Mm.
that.
Right.
And then what do we do with that? Oh, do we
Right.
take the uncomfortable step? For me, when I did know that it was time for my marriage to end, there was a deep peace
Mm-hmm.
and a trust because there was this knowing of like it was an expansive yes, an expansive like, okay, this is what needs to be done. And I knew that it would be excruciating.
Yeah.
Sometimes making the best decision, it doesn't mean that there's not going to be pain,
Right.
and those I think are the moments too to really consciously keep our hearts open and not
Mm-hmm.
shut down because we just don't want to be hurt again, which is totally
Yeah.
understandable.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So how do we stay, or how have you, maybe we'll do that. How have you stayed connected to your personal practice and to your connection to pleasure and connection to self and connection through this time, through this challenging time? That feels really hard. How do you
It
do it?
was, it was, especially, I think the hardest part for the family was when he actually left the house
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
the circumstances that he chose to live under. That was the hardest part. It was like grieving the death of a person who's still alive. So
Yeah.
that's the part I don't speak much on.
Mm-hmm.
A big part of the process for me was having a way and a space to express what I was feeling
Mm-hmm.
and to be witnessed in that. And
Mm-hmm.
so I shared a lot more with my close friends, but also just for me, my own path is to share certain things more publicly than most people maybe would. So
Mm-hmm.
I did process some things very publicly, and
Mm-hmm.
through that, the message I received was that the people who received healing through that, it would also heal me
Yeah.
simultaneously, and that's actually what
Yeah.
happened. It was beautiful. But I think that a big thing is having a space to be witnessed. That is so
Mm-hmm.
important.
Mm-hmm.
And whether it's, close trusted friends, one friend, your Instagram page, whatever that looks like for
Yeah.
each person. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. And another question that I'm just having now, I don't have children, but I know a lot of my listeners do have children. How do you boundary your personal time and your, whether it is self-pleasure or whether it's just, meditating or dancing or whatever it is, uninterrupted? Were you able to do that through the whole entirety of your parenting? Has there been periods where you weren't able to access that?
Yeah. Well, so my oldest two are now 15 and 16,
Okay.
and youngest two are 8 and 9. So for the entirety of my
Okay.
younger two, their lives, yes. However, I got into a meditation practice when my older two were still pretty young, and so
Mm-hmm.
I had to we had to do some training, some training in boundaries. Like, okay, mommy's going to be in here and I am going to lock the door. So if the door is
Mm-hmm.
locked, like, please know that I'm just busy. I'll be out when I'm done. And maybe
Yeah.
even if it's only 5 or 10 minutes, but having that as an understood part of our dynamic. And
Right.
for them, especially my older two, they witnessed my transformation. Like, they
Mm-hmm.
had front row seats to that. So they knew what
Yeah.
mommy was like when she was more dysregulated and feeling apathetic and shut down or overwhelmed and super reactive, versus when I started to implement certain practices and they started to experience me being more relaxed and kind and patient. So they
Mm-hmm.
wanted me to have that time because they saw the correlation. Of course, if
Right.
if you have toddlers, like when my younger two were babies, it really was a matter of just being intentional with whatever times I could have.
Mm-hmm.
If that was like first thing in the morning before the baby wakes up, and I just have 2 minutes to take some deep breaths to help me regulate my system and just do a little just like something to.
Mm-hmm.
I am a woman. I am a person first and foremost. I'm
Mm-hmm.
not just a caretaker for everyone.
Yeah.
And then just taking those moments throughout the day, taking advantage of those.
Yeah. Beautiful. Specifically around self-pleasure, because this has come up in conversations with my community, mamas in particular.
Yeah.
Let's say maybe they're new moms and they're feeling that, a little disconnected to their body as a sexual piece of them. And like what would be a really tangible first step back into connecting to yourself?
I mean, those little moments like that,
Yeah.
just being more conscious
Yeah.
of your breath. maybe even spending some time with grounding touch, just remembering that you live in a body, and you're not just a doing machine, and you're not just a milk machine. And it's beautiful because that helps bring more presence to the parts of motherhood that, are not so fun. Let's just be real. There are some parts that are they're just kind of, you just got to do them. And it's okay to not love every single part of it. I think also there's that, because there can be so much guilt with moms. I know this firsthand, where it's like, I should be enjoying these days. Everyone says they go so fast. And yes, they do. And on one hand, it's like, thank God. And on the other hand, it's like, oh, I wish I would have been more present. So it's like, you're damned if you do and damned if you don't. But
Right.
I would say just bringing more presence, awareness to just your body. So, and maybe, like breastfeeding, the breast can feel like, oh, don't touch, like, oh, just sensitive, leaking, everything. But I would say, like, even just connecting with your breasts and recognizing them as a source of nourishment for you. This is your heart space, and not just, and also acknowledging and appreciating that they nourish your child if you're breastfeeding, for example. But just there's so many different ways, and even more than I could think of at that time. So if or when I have more children, I'm interested to see what what I come up with in that. Yeah.
Yeah. Is that an open for you, or would you want more children?
Yeah, I am open. Yes.
Wow. Bless your heart. Love that. Okay, something I was making my drink this morning, and I was like, oh, I want to talk to Luci about the dark feminine. Right? There's so much focus, and there's so much focus on the soft, sweet, subtle, loving feminine, which is great. But I see your shares, and you're really the first woman that I can remember like really sharing and celebrating the side of us that doesn't get spoken of. Do you want to open up a little bit? Because I just think this part is so good. And I just would really, I want to know your journey on finding her and then learning to like accept and love her.
Yeah. And actually, this is like all these different faces of like, let's say the exiled feminine or the taboo feminine, is a lot of what we'll be going into in the upcoming mentorship, the Femme Vitale.
Okay.
So FYI, if anybody wants to check this out, what we're going to talk about, but deeper. But basically the dark feminine, when you think of that, it's like these aspects of not the manipulative, knows how to get what she wants and seduces to get what she wants. It's that is, if you searched, for example, hashtag dark feminine, you might see a lot of that. How to get what you want, how to seduce him into committing, whatever. And that's more what I would consider the shadow feminine, right? That's more of the maybe the distortions that are covering her true power. Because the darkness is it's like the fertile soil, it's the void, it's the womb, it's the place of rebirth. And so it's all these parts of ourselves and our, not just femininity, but who we are as beings, right? That are just disowned or repressed or rejected or judged. And so a lot of this is really in the realm of shadow work. But more specifically, for example, let's say our inner slut or our inner witch or our inner crazy bitch. Those are 3 archetypes I go into in my Wild Arrows course that I released a couple years ago or last year. But when you start to uncover these parts of yourself and you work through all these distorted perceptions that you have, these judgments that you have of her, like when I started my self-pleasure practice, I was like, well, I don't need to masturbate. Like, I'm not one of those women who just is so horny that she just can't wait and she has to touch herself. And I just had this very distorted perception of like, like no wonder I thought I had a low sex drive. I was terrified of my sexual desire and intensity. And so, but as you think about that with your inner witch and your soul, your spiritual gifts, your ability to tap into these other realms and do this deep healing work, it can be terrifying too. So all of that. So that's just a little bit of what's available there.
Yeah, and I feel like there's there's resistance for so many women to go into that space. And so
Yeah,
actually,
of
let's
course.
just use this as an opportunity for you to share a little bit about the upcoming offering that you have. Give us a little snippet.
Yes. So we're going into different aspects of her, meaning the feminine, the fullness of the feminine, like her
Yeah.
wrath, her rage, her, that intensity that so many of us are afraid to feel, and with good
Mm-hmm.
reason, right? Because we don't want
Mm-hmm.
to be out of control, even more than we don't want to be perceived as out of control. We don't want to feel that of like spinning out of control. We'll also be exploring more of like her longing and desire and her yearning and her insatiable lust, all these very uncomfortable parts. And it's like the inner maiden really comes out with that, because it's like, you need to meet me in my desire and you need to give me what I want. And that will be purified so hard when you go deep into this work.
Okay.
And then also going into those medicine, that soul medicine
Mm-hmm.
that we're here to bring, what we're here to create in the world. And on a practical level, how we access all these different energies, this wide range in our day-to-day lives. Because as a mother, I'm not going to be showing up with certain energies with my kids, but in an instant, I can flow into another energy because that is what serves the moment best. And so it's
Yeah.
a practice to be able to access these different energies in ourselves. So that's what we'll be doing in that container.
Sounds so good. Sounds so
Yeah, I'm
good.
excited.
Yeah, I bet you are. I bet you are. You spoke about you said something like you were afraid of your self-pleasure practice, or that you're like, I'm not one of those women that masturbates. I feel like, is that a common misconception that self-pleasure has to be masturbation?
Yeah, and also a common misconception that let's say we only self-pleasure because we are horny.
Right.
Actually,
Right.
a lot of the times in my practice, I would go into my self-pleasure practice not feeling like it. Now, there's a difference between forcing something. We're not forcing
Mm-hmm.
our bodies into something, but there's a difference between forcing something and just not feeling like it, but being open to what's there.
Mm-hmm.
And similarly to what I guide couples through when one of them comes to me with an issue of, I have a higher sex drive than my partner, or vice versa.
Mm-hmm.
And it really, a lot of the work there is in establishing more safety within their
Yeah.
bodies. Both partners, not just the one that is quote unquote the lower desire partner, because sometimes
Mm-hmm.
that is what's keeping our sexual energy from flowing, is that lack of feeling safe enough to really go there.
Yeah. Gosh, I just think about how, because communication, like there just has to be such clear, loving communication. And I just also see how that is like such a struggle for so many people, to be able, and
Yeah.
I'll speak for myself as a woman. For so many years, I wouldn't ask for what I wanted. And because I didn't ask, I never actually knew. And so
Mm,
it wasn't until I was 39 that I even had a partner that I could explore those conversations with.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
it makes me kind of sad to think of how many people are just living in this, like, almost like little shelled version of self, and all it takes
Yeah.
is just a couple conversations.
Yeah. And the space too to discover for yourself, to just give yourself space to play, space to be deeply
Yeah.
present with whatever's there, especially initially when women start a pleasure practice. It's common for it not to be very pleasurable because there are all these feelings that
Huh.
might come up, these stories, these judgments, this feeling of, oh, disgust, or I'm wasting my time, or what am I doing? It's not working. I don't feel it.
Yeah.
And so it's a lot of being very deeply present with your body. But when you really do
Mm-hmm.
start to tap into these really exquisite pleasures, then it's like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, how can we play with this? How can I
Mm-hmm.
discovered how to tap into that in my practice, and then I brought it into the bedroom, and then we expanded
Mm-hmm.
on that together. And it was
Yeah.
this synergistic thing. So I think also a lot of women are just taught, or somehow there's this unspoken assumption that a man is supposed to unlock us and show us everything,
Right.
and they're equally learning things too, most of them. So,
Right.
it's like we're figuring this out together. So yeah, it's that playing curiosity and an honest hearts.
Yeah. So that piece around, because I've definitely experienced it in the past. I don't experience it anymore, thankfully. But that sense of self-judgment or shame or disgust or, well, anything in that realm. Is there a process? What's the process of moving through that? So if someone's in the midst of a self-pleasure practice and those feelings come up, what then?
Yeah. Well, it's kind of like if you like stub your toe against something, and you're not going to be like, fuck you, toe. Like you might initially, you might judge your toe, you might judge the thing that you
Right.
hit on, but it's just like, okay, it is what it is. I'm feeling this right now, and let me, for example, breathe through it. Let me breathe, and and maybe remind myself consciously that just because I feel this way doesn't mean that it is the truth.
Right.
And so there are also some different mental things and processes that I do share an example like the self-pleasure course. But there's no rushing to fix anything. There's no agenda to fix it or make it go away. The intention is to be with it. And you can even imagine, let's say, your shame or your feeling of disgust as give it a face. Not a person but like just see like what kind of shape does this take? If my disgust had a shape, what would it look like? And what color would it be? And let me just be with it as if I'm sitting with a friend, and then just ask it like, what do you need to tell me? What is it that you're trying to protect? What are you afraid of?
Yeah.
And that can help soften the resistance there. And in fact, like to apply that practice, that same kind of dialogue, to any part of myself that I've resisted along the way.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's like your inner 12-year-old or your inner teenager that was like, oh, sex is bad. Don't go to hell because this is going to damn your soul forever. That's the message I got. So my whole soul was at risk. I had
Right.
I had
Danger zone.
a lot of unsafety feelings in my body. Yeah.
Yeah. God, look at you now, kid. Look at you now.
Quite a bit
Oh my
different.
gosh. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Speaking of pleasure, what are some non-sexual pleasures that you are currently absolutely obsessing over?
Well, dancing has been one for me for a long time.
Yeah.
And let's see, I really enjoy my cacao also. That's a big pleasure.
Do you have it
And
every
I like
day?
to all of these things. Yes, with rare exceptions, usually when I run out. So,
Right.
we get it from the Amazon. So it's kind of like we got to get it. I'll have access to it all the time very soon, but
I
just right now,
know. Yeah.
I'm so excited.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's one thing. And I also really love to feel the eroticism in all of it, which is not explicitly sexual. It's this
Yeah.
feeling of aliveness, of like yum, like ooh. And so what
Yeah.
else? Let's see. Yeah, even just writing, like writing a post. It's a spiritual practice for me, and it's
Okay.
also an art form. And so any way that I can express myself as well is very pleasurable.
I love that. Okay, you just used the word eroticism, and I like that word. And I think it's another word that is not understood fully. Can you go into a
Yeah.
little bit of that and even like maybe Eros a little, like kind of open that up? Because I feel like this is new dialogue for a lot of people, but I know they're so curious.
Yeah. Well, I think that what people are really craving from sex and what they're craving from life at large is to feel that connection with Eros. And so
Yeah.
that is like this life, this juice in life, it's that mojo, and it's not directly sexual. In fact, there is a book that I highly recommend for anyone who wants to explore this deeper. and it's
Mm-hmm.
called A Return to Eros by
Mm-hmm.
Mark Gaffney and Christina Kincaid. Yeah, it's a little bit on the
Yes.
longer side. I think the audiobook is maybe 12
It's
hours,
like 8.
but
I think it's even
worth
more.
it.
I think it's like 17 hours. I have it
Is
and
it like
I've
17 or 8? Oh my God.
it's massive.
Yes.
I've listened to it. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah.
It's
That's,
fabulous.
and then it's about time I re-listened to it again, because every time throughout these, however long it's been, I get something new and like
Mhm.
deeper, juicier out of it. But yeah, that. So
Yeah.
when you think of the Eros, it's like I love the connection that they make between the holy and the erotic and how they're one and the same.
Yes.
That
Mm-hmm.
was a big fuck yes for me. I was like, oh, this makes so much
Mm-hmm.
sense. The
Yeah.
cherubs intertwined, lost
Yeah.
forever, banished from
Yeah.
history. The religious,
Yeah.
um, interesting. But
Mm-hmm.
there is it's being on the inside, it's this deep intimacy. And so for the arrows to be flowing within ourselves or between us and another person, our hearts have to be open. And an open heart
Mm-hmm.
is an honest heart that feels everything that is
Mm-hmm.
emerging. Not like, oh, I need to protect from that. I feel that. And naturally, our bodies will protect us, just physically. Our nervous systems will protect us from more than we can physically process. And so
Mm-hmm.
sometimes it's really a conscious decision of also recognizing, okay, there's a closure here. And I'm not going to judge myself or the closure, but just be with that and
Mm-hmm.
inquire into that. What can I learn from this? Where do I
Mm-hmm.
feel unsafe to open? What are the stories? And what is
Yeah.
love guiding me to do? But the erotic, I love how they talk about the erotic, the sexual mimics the erotic, but we were never meant to get the fullness of our erotic needs met through just the sexual avenue, because it would just like collapse on itself. It's way too much of a,
Mm-hmm.
it's a burden. Like we are insatiable in
Mm-hmm.
our quest for the erotic. And so
Mm-hmm.
that's why there's, the value of beauty, of landscaping, of, having that expansive feeling, because it's deeply erotic. So I say has a lot more to do with our senses and engaging our aliveness, our spark, and
Mm-hmm.
also includes the directly sexual things, because we learn so much in the sexual container about
Yeah.
what turns us on in life also. So it's
Mm-hmm.
not like, erotic isn't sexual. Like, yes, it is. And it's so much more.
Yeah, it makes me think about just letting every act in the day be a pleasurable act where you're actually taking a moment. Like I imagine you with your cacao. I trust there might even be prayer into making the cacao. And then there's probably a moment where you're
Yes.
feeling the heat of the cup and you're smelling it and you're letting like your
Mm,
senses turn on. And that is
yeah.
like, that's an erotic experience. Yes.
Yes. And it's a
Yeah.
deeply connected. So it's also a spiritual, and I know that that word is loaded too. So that might
Right.
conjure up some different images, but it's this connection to, this source of love.
hmm I love it. I love the unpacking of the heaviness around sexuality
Yeah.
and the darkness and the dark feminine and the feelings. And it really, like you've spoken to it a few times, it really is about giving space to all of your feelings and and being curious about them and letting them just be little snippets of information for you, and that just being
Yeah.
with it, like when you spoke about being with the shame story, it's like parts work. I don't know if maybe you do.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah, it's such beautiful work. And again, one of those things that if someone hasn't experienced an exploration of like parts work or internal family systems, it's hard to
Hmm.
like grasp that. And it's so powerful. Just which really I feel like at the base of it, it's erotic because it's just being with, it's experiencing and being
Yes.
with all of the layers of this feeling, of this part, of this emotion. Yeah, it's kind of
Yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the experience of being with, because even in the sexual setting, let's say, for example, the best part of it, I mean, for me anyways, we'll see if this resonates with anyone, is
Mm-hmm.
being experienced and experiencing. in a way that is as liberated and free and curious and exploration and unhinged as as you may be going in that experience. And so the whole thing is really experiencing and being experienced.
Beautiful. I have a question that I have only ever asked at the beginning of a podcast. This is funny. I forgot about it and dove right straight in. And so I'm going to ask you now before I forget, because it's a very important conversation. What are you currently It's so funny. It's like the whole purpose of the podcast is this word and this question. But what are you, Luci, currently reclaiming?
That's a good one. I think very specifically a theme that's come up just in the past, not even week, and it's this might sound kind of funny, but it's my inner 12-year-old, and very specifically, it was the time of my life when I got my first period. And I actually walked the women through a journey in the 3-day challenge that I just did, and around that kind of experience, and it was really powerful. And so I love that this part of me, there's some kind of something coming to completion with my inner 12-year-old, her initiation into womanhood, and this move that I'm about to make. So I don't fully understand it consciously, but like I feel it in my body, and there's like old like phantom pains, like when they talk about like a phantom limb and you feel it still, but it's not there. So it's not like an acute alive pain that's present and alive in me now, but it's like this phantom pain. I'm like, oh, interesting. So I'm reclaiming whatever it is that she felt like she didn't get to own.
Oh, I trust that you'll give that to her with a joy once it's clear.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. Is there anything kind of on your heart, anything extra you want to share, anything we kind of tapped on but didn't maybe go fully into?
Just I think the theme that keeps coming up that I've noticed in this part of the year, right? We're over halfway through the year. A lot of rebirth. It's like we've had all these deaths throughout the year, maybe like a big death of something, and then all these rapid expansions and evolutions. And right now, I'm definitely feeling it, and I've heard this from a lot of women too. It's like we're in this birth canal in the cosmic vagina, and we're about to come out and just and there's all this light, and there's all this and we can breathe and we can stretch, but it's like there's this squeeze. And so for anyone who feels like they're in that kind of squeeze through the birth canal of their journey, that doesn't mean that your heart has to be closed or collapsed. It just feels like a squeeze, but you can still have an openness to the experience of that. And there's just a lot around keeping our hearts open, which is a lot of feeling whatever's there and being really gentle with ourselves while we do that.
Yeah. Thank you. Where's the best place for people to find you?
All of the current offerings and links to everything will be at lucilampe.com, or they can also find me on Instagram at lucilampe.
Beautiful. And you have a big adventure coming up. Are you moving to Peru?
I'm not moving to Peru, but close, and you will see.
Okay. Fine.
In a couple weeks.
Okay, beautiful. I'll leave that there. I don't have to know everything.
Will be revealed. Much more, that and more will be revealed very soon. So
amazing.
Stay tuned.
Okay, thank you so much. You are just a pillar in this world. And I really appreciate you. I appreciate what you do. I appreciate how you show up. And I look forward to continuing to follow along and learn and be inspired by you.
Thank you so much, Kyla, and to everyone listening. Thank you for having me on today.
All right, beauties. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you really enjoyed that conversation. If you haven't yet, please do me a favor and leave a rating or review for the podcast. It is so helpful. It's really the way that we can get this conversation out to more people. And of course, subscribe if you want to be up to date on all of the newest episodes. We're in August. We're in August. And what that means for me and for you is I've just released just the other day, 4 days ago, the Toolkit Built for a Queen. And this is something fun I've been working on as I've closed the registration to the essentials. So at this point in time, you cannot join the Breathwork membership. There will come a time when you can, but right now is not that time. So in place of, I've created the Toolkit Built for a Queen. So what's inside the toolkit? There's going to be breathwork techniques. There's going to be somatic practices. There's going to be mindset and emotional growth exercises, embodiment journeys. And the intention is to keep you either on your journey of becoming the queen in your life, in your family, in your home, in your business, or to make sure that you don't slip off your throne, just like really keep you anchored and strong in your being, giving you all of the tools, all of the skills so that you know how to move yourself gracefully through the challenges of life. So the link to the toolkit, of course, is in the show notes. And if you haven't yet explored Breathe With Me, which is a 5-day free breathwork journey, please do that as well. Link is down below. I love you lots, and I will see you next time.